Today, I'm not going to do a typical normal message, but I do have some thoughts that I would like to share with you. So we'll go ahead and look at Matthew 20, verse 25. Now, this is an interesting story that we're picking up on. We're kind of picking up halfway through the story. And what's going on is that James and John, two disciples of Jesus, approached Jesus with their mother, actually. I believe they were kind of nudged and encouraged by their mom to approach Jesus and ask that when he becomes king, could they sit on either side of him? Could they have positions of authority with them? And several times throughout Scripture, throughout the story of Jesus, you'll notice that the disciples, despite having spent 3 years with him, don't quite get it. They often don't fully understand what God is doing, what Jesus is doing. I'm sure many of you can relate to that. I certainly can, of not always understanding what it is that Jesus is doing. Because when the Jewish people expected a Messiah, what they thought and what they hoped for would be a warrior king who would come and overthrow the Roman Empire. And so we'll see that despite the fact that Jesus has told them several times that this isn't how it's going to be, and he's already started telling them about what is to come, what his fate will be, they continue to just have this false idea of what he is doing. And so they ask him, hey, when you set up your kingdom, can we sit on either side of you? And Jesus had to rebuke them and correct them and just say, guys, this isn't the point. So in verse 25, it says, but Jesus called them to himself and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them. He's saying, guys, what you're asking for, this is what the Romans do. This is what the Gentiles and the pagans do. This is what your enemies do. They seek authority and power in order to exercise that authority and power over their subjects. He says, that's not what this is. Yet it shall not be so among you. But whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. Jesus says, guys, this isn't what my kingdom is about. Follow my example of serving. If you want to be great, you must be a servant. You must even be a slave to others. Unfortunately, in ministry, you will encounter people who seek positions of authority, seek positions of leadership, truthfully for the wrong intentions. They want to be leaders in order to exercise power. They want to be in charge. They want to be in control. And you will find this, of course, anywhere in the world, any business place. You probably know coworkers like this. Unfortunately, some of you probably have bosses who are like this. But it's the wrong motivation. Because Jesus says, in order to be a leader in my kingdom, you must first be a servant. If I had to use one word to describe Pastor Mike's career and his entire life up to this point, that word would be service. Pastor Mike has a true servant's heart. Growing up on Houck Mountain in the Catskills, Mike was given a lot of responsibility over his 4 siblings and the home. At night, his role was actually to sleep by the wood stove in order to keep it going all night. And every time his siblings got in trouble, it was up to him to solve the problem, fix the issue, which is something that continues to this very day. Now, I don't have the exact dates. My timelines might be a little fuzzy, but in the 80s, Mike joined the Army Reserves. He made the decision to serve his country. He very quickly became identified as a leader, and he was even offered a higher position, a higher career in the military, but he decided instead to choose ministry and pursue ministry. In 86, Mike walked into Nyack College, no money, no application, I believe, just a single bag of belongings, but he trusted God. He trusted that he was supposed to be there, and thankfully it all worked out. And it's a crazy story. All of these stories I encourage you to talk to him about. When he graduated, he began his vocational ministry at Pineview Community Church from 1992 until 1995, where he was a youth pastor. He went on to become the youth pastor at Fulton Alliance, and later on became the senior pastor there until 1998. In September of 1998, Mike was called to a little country church called Bethel Baptist, which would later on become Lamson Road Community Church. Over the past 26 years, God has used Pastor Mike to reach individuals that are often neglected by many churches in the Christian community. Early on, Pastor Mike recognized the need for more men to be involved in church. He understood there was a great lack of men in the American church, and he began a wide variety of ministries in order to reach them and to reach the local rural community. Some of these ministries and outreach opportunities included Manly Monday. It included Hunter's Education, antique tractor pulls, which ended up actually becoming some of the largest in the region. When a burden had to be bared in this church or in this community, Pastor Mike would volunteer his shoulders to carry it. Whenever the church was struggling financially, he took that burden. He kept decreasing his salary and would never again receive a raise. As a result, Mike, as well as many pastors of smaller churches, has had other jobs throughout the years, a few of which would actually become great ministry opportunities for him. Eventually, one of them, Pastor Mike took on the role of a counselor at a halfway house for men recovering from addictions. It was here that God began to open his eyes to the struggles of these men, listened to their stories, and gained a new perspective and a new compassion for them. Around this time, the church allowed Pastor Mike to begin a farm out on the property, and he began to slowly develop the idea for Shadow Haven Ministries. The men at the halfway house needed to fulfill a certain number of hours of service, so what he began to do was offer them the opportunity to work on the church or on the farm property. So they would come and they would perform chores on the church property, and they'd fulfill some of their hours, and he would have conversations with them. He would listen to their stories. He would share with them. He would be a light to them and offer them hope. As men graduated from the program, Mike saw the need for a quarter house. Because what happened to many of these men was they graduated from the halfway house, and then they're just left out by themselves out in the world. And it's often an incredibly harsh transition going from being able to depend on other people and depend on a program now to being left all to yourself. So there is this need to help transition, aid in a transition from a halfway house out into the regular world. So with the church's permission, Pastor Mike began allowing individuals to stay here in the back in the church, in this community, to aid in their transition and perform meaningful work out on the farm in lieu of paying rent. And so they got to work with their hands. They got to experience nature. They got to experience a side of life that most of them had never experienced. And as the need for this ministry arose, originally people were sleeping in old classrooms back there that weren't being used. Then we actually converted the back hallway into an apartment where we began to house several people at a time. This apartment has housed many men and families throughout the years, some recovering addicts through Shadow Haven, and then other families who were just in need of a temporary residence. As Shadow Haven grew, Mike began renting out a second location, what we referred to as the Luke House. And we had several people living both in the apartment and over into the Luke House. Many men have gone through the program, some having successful recovery stories, fortunately others falling back into their own lifestyle. Anyone here who has either had an addiction or faced an addiction realized the tremendous difficulty that Mike took on. He continually faced an uphill battle and unfortunately faced many heartbreaks and even betrayals along the way. He's faced some of these in the church as well. Pastoring the modern American church has become a burden and an expectation far greater than any one man can carry himself. And he is the most generous person I know, sacrificing his time, his energy, and his money to practically anyone in need. And the reality is, with such level of generosity, it's often taken advantage of. But despite this, he has remained a generous servant. There's never been a job too large or too small for him. In the church alone, this church alone, he has been pastor, preacher, Sunday school teacher, youth pastor, counselor, administrator, treasurer, landscaper, maintenance worker, plumber, building renovator, and custodian, just to name a few. He's been the true definition of a servant leader, leading by example through even the most undesired tasks. He's not only served the local community, he has also accepted the call to make disciples of all nations, as Jesus says, doing mission work in the Philippines, the Dominican Republic, and Canada, even taking on the most sacrificial task of working alongside obnoxious teenagers in World Changers and Reach mission trips. His reward for that in heaven alone will be tremendous. In times of crises, he has jumped to the call, serving with disaster relief in several different states in Missouri and Texas and the Schenectady area. Mike has comforted countless families as they mourn the loss of loved ones, performing beautiful ceremonies that would touch so many lives. Pastor Mike defied all other statistics by actually increasing our church's congregation both during and after COVID, which is virtually unseen by all other churches who continue to lose members following COVID. In crises, he has remained the shining example of servant leadership. And some haven't always understood Pastor Mike's vision and the community that he has always been trying to reach. He would receive pushback about the men he started bringing into the church, broken people who desperately needed a savior. And despite the opposition he's faced, he has remained a faithful servant to Christ's command to love our neighbors. He's had to make many difficult decisions over the years. Being a true biblical servant requires both protection and correction. And these difficult conversations aren't often taken too well. But despite this, he has remained a faithful servant to the role and the requirements that God has laid out for him. He has dedicated himself to preaching the truth of the gospel, declaring the love of Jesus, but also not shying away from the tough subjects. Like Jesus, he has drawn many people through the light of the word, and like Jesus, he has driven people away through the offense of the word. But he's remained a faithful teacher. Ministry is a very difficult vocation because you can't often see the results of your work. The negative experiences will sometimes stick out more than the positive impact that you've had. But I can stand before you and say without a doubt that Pastor Mike has had a greater impact on this church, this community, and so many other lives in the world today than he will ever realize on this side of eternity. There will be a line of people in heaven waiting to thank him because of the work that he's done in their lives. There are marriages that have been saved, families that have been restored, individuals who have recovered their lives through the faithful work of Pastor Mike. People have been fed, cared for, prayed for, and even given places to live because of Pastor Mike's ministry. There are 4 generations of our family in this church because of the way Pastor Mike has shepherded and served this congregation. Many of the young adults who are here today grew up in this church and either remained in this church or found their way back. That's virtually unseen among my generation. Most of you have attested at one point or another that you are here today because of the welcoming environment. Mike has fostered a community and culture of authenticity and openness to people who haven't felt like they belong in church. We are very proud of the fact that the people who come to this church and stay are often people who have either never been to a church or haven't been to a church in many years. All are welcome here, but our intention and his intention has never been to steal people away from other churches. It has always been to reach the lost, and that's what Pastor Mike has done through his ministry here. God has used Pastor Mike in many ways because he has made the decision to time and time again be a faithful servant, to say yes to God's calling for his life, even when it didn't make sense. And God has used him in such specific and unique ways that no one else could fulfill. God saw the preachers and the pastors of Central New York. He saw the traditional ministers and the reverends. He saw the younger, trendy pastors, and he said that there's enough of them here. What he needed was a cowboy, a man of true grit, a hunter, a farmer, an outdoorsman, a man with calloused hands and broad shoulders, a loving, compassionate man with a heart for those who have been neglected by the world. God has had and continues to have a very unique calling for Pastor Mike. And God has a calling for each and every one of us, for every one of you. He has a specific purpose, a specific plan, a unique way that he wants to use you for his kingdom. The question is, will you be obedient to that call as Pastor Mike has? Will you accept God's purpose for your life? Will you say yes before you even know what it is? And the journey will not be easy. And it won't always make sense. Most of the time, you may not see the big picture. You won't understand what he's doing. But we have to trust him. We have to trust his calling for our lives. And this hasn't just been the journey of Pastor Mike, but it's also been the journey of Melanie, walking alongside him these past 26 years of being at Lamson Road, the past 32 years of ministry, and throughout their whole marriage. It's not easy being a pastor's wife. Oftentimes there are unfair expectations placed upon you. But she's remained by his side, encouraging and supporting him and stepping up in times of need in this church. There's this false expectation that a pastor's wife is to be a pastor. That a pastor's wife, because she married a pastor, is expected to take on all these roles and duties in the church. You don't find that anywhere else in the world. A police officer's wife isn't expected to go out and enforce the law. But she's remained beside him. And growing up as a pastor's kid isn't easy. It's very difficult, very challenging. But the fact that Michaela and I are here today is because of the man and the pastor that he is. So many pastors' kids have left the church. But we came back. Michaela's now raising a family here. I met my wife here. It's because of Pastor Mike and because of Melanie and how they've raised us and how they've been together an example of what it is to be a strong Christian couple, a strong Christian marriage, a God-honoring relationship. God has had a specific and unique calling for both of them, just like he does for us. The question is, will you follow in their example and be obedient? Will you honor their legacy and be obedient to your calling? And we know that if we are, our reward will be great in heaven. Matthew 25, verse 31 says, "When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep on his right, but the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me, and I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me.' Then the righteous will answer him, saying, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you a drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?' And the king will answer them, 'Truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me.'" That is Pastor Mike's ministry of his entire life. And I know it will continue to be his ministry. And we're called to do the same. And he will continue to have a role here. But as he transitions away from the role of pastor, he's not just passing the torch on to me. He's passing the torch on to all of us to follow in his example. He's had an amazing career, an amazing ministry here. So we have a video that we would like to show, just honoring his legacy and all that God has done through him. Dad, thank you. It is your fault. Excuse me. It is because of you that I am where I am today. My only hope is that as pastor here, I will be able to follow in your footsteps and honor the legacy that you have left behind of 26 years of shepherding these people. I hope to be half the man of God, half the preacher, half the pastor and leader that you have been. And I'm so fortunate enough to have been mentored by you, to have been fathered by you, and to have been able to watch you my entire life be the leader and the pastor that you are. You have always supported me and encouraged me more than anyone else, and somehow you've always known that I would be here one day, even when I tried to run from it and deny it. There's not a single life that you have changed and impacted more than mine, but that being said, there are a lot of people who would like to say thank you.
Hello, this is Terry Robertson from the Baptist Convention of New York. I wanted to congratulate Pastor Mike Houck on a job well done. I think it's going to be quite an adjustment to see the transition taking place, but what a great transition to have David step in as the new pastor at Lamson Road. I congratulate Pastor Mike, Pastor David, and the Lamson Road Church. What a great celebration you're having today. I am so sorry I cannot be there with you, but I definitely will be thinking of you and praying for you. God bless.
Congratulations, Pastor Mike Houck. Thanks so much for the relationship we've had throughout the years. Thank you, first of all, for your referrals that you sent me and all the people you've connected me with throughout your ministry and mine. And our talks at Leadership Summit, our talks different times about business, how things are going for you at the church, and also the new ministry of with the men that you serve. And you have a great heart for those men. I really appreciate how much it is. In fact, your heart is so great, that might be one of your problems, you know. But anyhow, I'm sure you're working on that. And the transition you're going to have now with Dave, this is a very important thing as well. And I know you're going to do this really well. And he's going to feel the love and support and the freedom to serve the way he sees God leading him. So thanks, Mike, for all you've done.
Hey, Dad. Thank you for everything that you've done over the years, and especially raising David and I and passing along the faith onto us. We're very excited for this new adventure for you. I'm excited that you'll have more free time to watch the grandkids. And I think you still owe me some money from all the times that you've mentioned me in your sermons. So let's square up soon.
Pastor Mike, thank you so much for your service over the years, all of your hard work and dedication to this church. I have enjoyed being here for the part of it that I've been here for. And thank you for not mentioning me too many times in your sermons, even after I joined the family. And thank you for loving our kids and everyone in the church so well. You've really set a good example of how to be a strong Christian man and a leader over the years, so thank you.
Hey, Pastor Mike, thank you so much for all your service. I remember back the first day we came to Lamson Road and you helped us feel right at home. I hope you enjoy your retirement. Take a rest. We got you from here.
Hi, Pastor Mike. We just wanted to say thank you for all your years of service to the church and most of all to God. Your sermons were always on point, in alignment with the Bible. You never watered them down in fear of offending someone. Your sermons are always easy to follow and always made us reflect on our own spiritual lives. You will be greatly missed as our senior pastor, but you and God prepared your son well to take your place in ministry. Proverbs 22:6 says, "Train your child up in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Both of your children are examples of that. You and David are both very gifted in ministry by our Heavenly Father. Like father, like son, we wish you well as you embark on a new journey of ministry and sharing your faith of the love and goodness of Christ our Savior. We love you, Pastor Mike. God bless.
Love you, Pastor Mike.
I really feel when Richard and I first came to this church, it made an impression on me that Pastor Mike came up and talked to us and made himself known and really welcomed us to the church, because other churches we tried and they just didn't seem friendly. They didn't seem really cared. But Pastor Mike really showed how much he really cared, and he's glad that we came.
Pastor Mike, thank you so much for your faithful service to Lamson Road, for pouring yourself into this place for the last 26 years. I appreciate you for your servant's heart, for your commitment to God's word, and for your desire to seek his will for your life. In my own life, I've gone through a lot of ups and downs, but you and your ministry here have always been a constant. It means more to me than I can probably express. I just want to thank you for your service, for your friendship, for your willingness to give of yourself. Thank you for being faithful to God's call. I and my family and all of us here at Lamson Road love you.
A minute isn't long enough to talk about the 22 years that I've known Pastor Mike, but David said that's all I get, and so here we are. Who put him in charge anyways? Who would have guessed that the church needing a new roof would have resulted in us finding a new church and staying here all these years later? We tried out this church because it was close by, but we stayed because your preaching is honest, Bible-based, and the atmosphere is always welcoming. As your hair has lightened in color, your dedication to the church, God, your family, and your congregational family has not wavered. It has only grown stronger. Your sermons have always been applicable to today's life and easy to understand. Thank you for all that you have done, the sacrifices that you have made, and your continual dedication to all of us and to God. You've challenged us, encouraged us, allowed us to see things through different lenses, and supported us. Good luck on your newest adventure. We know you'll do great things in other people's lives, just as you have done in ours. I can't wait to see what else God has in store for you and for all of us. May the force be with you.
Papa, we think you're a really great pastor. Thank you for watching us the kids camp. Thank you for watching the free kids camp.
Pastor Michael, congratulations. I remember all those years ago when you came into Word of Life and you thought you were going to meet with the senior pastor. I was at the front desk at the time, and we realized pretty shortly into our conversation that you were there so that we could meet. And from there, oh, the places that the Lord has taken us. I am so thankful for the ways that Shadow Haven has been able to connect with 99.1 and provide opportunities for women to encounter Christ right on your property. You are so generous and so kind. The way that you have prepared space behind the scenes, stoked up fires, teaching us to shoot the guns, and you're just one in a million. You are so like Christ in the way that you minister and the way that you love others. And I just am so thankful that our paths have crossed. I look forward to future encounters with you. I love you and your family so very much. Shadow Haven and Lamson Road will always have a very special place in my heart. Pastor Michael, you are one in a million. Congratulations. Well done.
Pastor Mike, there are many, many memories over the years. It was very hard to choose, but two that I would like to highlight because of your reaction to them. One was the Christmas Eve night when we were singing Silent Night, and the kids had light sticks. And the song started, and they started dancing around as the adults, of course, are trying to be very solemn. And you were delighted. And the other one was the tractor pull that we had where it had been storming all around us. And the tractor pull wasn't done, and we were very concerned because it was lightning, wind, and thunder. And we all prayed, and God was gracious, and He made sure God got the glory. So, thank you for all the conversations, sermons, ministry opportunities, and meetings. Yes, even meetings, celebrations, and more. Through all of this, I learned how to live each day as a child of God. I would always like to be led by a shepherd, but once I realized my rebellion required it, I couldn't have asked for a better one than that in you, Pastor Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Mike.
Thank you, Pastor Mike.
Thank you, Pastor Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dad.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Papa. We love you.